King. Sometimes, a lot of times I just.
I said you were.
Said
you were.
I got this stuff. I wouldn't go up front, I'd get wiped out.
And Tamales was awesome. We laid around and.
I thought maybe you were drinking already that day. Or was that?
We
And
might have been.
then I asked her.
The lady that always jogs. Her face I'm talking with. Okay.
No, we really, we had a great
But she
time.
runs down Ferns, and the other day she stopped.
I haven't,
in the
none of
like,
us,
what are you doing?
none of us
It's
have
like,
been together
I can't, I'm
literally
gonna get
3
taken out
years.
if I go to the lake.
Yeah.
I stop
For
her
years,
road.
for
She
the last
walks around
30
and starts
years.
running again.
We're together
morning she
weeks
was
at a
like-
time,
I
multiple
think she
times a year.
realized that I wasn't
traveling,
mad,
you
but
know?
Yeah.
crazy doing that.
And so it was really good. And now we're all kind of not doing.
This
what we
is a
were
good
doing
one. It's a workout.
Before.
I do use my cheating gear sometimes.
And they're
Real
definitely
tired.
retiring, so.
Mhm.
Or
It's all right.
retired or retired. So. It was good. Look at that. We're gonna make it. Is this it? You ready, Mandy? Everybody got their microphones on?
Yep.
Let's do this. I'm gonna call to order the regular session of the May 11th regular board meeting for the Humboldt Bay Harbor Recreation and Conservation District. We'll start with Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Octor, do you say the pledge for us?
Commissioner?
Yeah. Mr. Octor, or Director Octor.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, sir. Would you like to? Oh, we gotta have a roll call.
Commissioner Higgins,
I'm here.
Commissioner Benson,
Present.
Commissioner Newman,
Here.
Vice President Coleman,
Here.
and President Dale.
Here. Thank you for that, Mindy. Brian, would you like to report out on closed session?
Yeah, there was no reportable action taken during tonight's closed session.
Thank you. At this point in the agenda, we have space for comment on items not agendized on this agenda. If you have something you would like to speak on that's not on our agenda, please step forward, state your name and where you're from, and let us have it. All right, seeing no public comment, we'll move into the consent calendar.
Move to adopt the consent calendar.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes to pass the consent calendar. Communications and reports.
Can you, is there any slides on this, Chris?
I have two slides for you.
Can you advance it to the next one? So the Army Corps of Engineer dredging, we were really fortunate to have both the Uquina and the Esseonce in port. And in the last couple of days, the Uquina has been dredging right up against the in the Eureka Channel in front of Woodley Island Marina, as we have discussed before. And so the timing couldn't have been more perfect for us. And the Army Corps of Engineers has been doing an absolutely fantastic job on that. And it's my understanding that they the Uquina is leaving the bay tonight, but the Esseonce is still here. And so in the first place, the report is that the Esseonce arrived just in the right amount of time. The Green Diamond chip ship was here. They took down the draft restriction, and Green Diamond was able to go out with almost 100% full load of chips, which was, again, the cavalry came in just at the right time, cleared the draft restriction in time for the chip ship to go out. And so the longshoremen and everybody, it was really good news for the port. The last thing I want to bring up on the Army Corps of Engineers dredging is that the bar pilot trainee has been a huge success thus far. In the last couple of days, the trainees have been able to get on the boat at night and do some night crossings, because their requirement is to do a certain number of day crossings and also a certain number of night crossings. In the beginning, because for safety reasons, the Army Corps was requesting to only have the bar pilot trainees on during the daytime. But because of the comfort level that they built up while they were here, they were able to stay on and get some night training. And so again, really want to give the kudos to the Army Corps of Engineers for coming and helping us out. And it's really starting to pay off for us. And then Mindy, do you want to give this update briefly? So I will go ahead. Mindy highly led the charge from the Harbor District standpoint on the scenic eclipse, which arrived on May 7th with 256 passengers on board, 180 of which came on shore. And so then Mindy in the Harbor District helped to coordinate the excursion crews, the private sector excursion crews, and there were 95 passengers that went out on various excursions, whether it was to the Sequoia Park Zoo, Old Town, Trinidad Head on a hiking adventure, and a couple of other locations. And everyone was really happy with the way the cruise ship happened. And again, it was good to have another vessel in port there.
Got a lot of publicity.
Beautiful.
I'll turn it over to Chris. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I just say one last thing is that I last couple of days was in Sacramento at an offshore wind conference and was on a panel where we discussed basically the port infrastructure associated with the offshore wind. I was on the panel with Long Beach and Crowley, and then another party from Morro Bay area. And then this morning I went over to the Cal Maritime Academy and gave a presentation to the MARAD's leadership, the administrator of all of MARAD, and then the directors from all of the regions, the Gulf region, the Great Lakes region, the Northeast, the West Coast, et cetera, all of the regions. And the California Energy Commission, myself and Moffett Nickel were there. And we were all three of us were really emphasizing that Humboldt Bay will be the first heavy lift marine terminal, and was really encouraging MARAD to provide funding for the ports, and really kind of setting the stage for the next couple of years of what MARAD should see. And so it was really a great opportunity for that's over of the airport. And I wanted to talk to really thank best time the West Coast region, another one of the key partners that we've been developing over the last couple of years. These kinds of relationships and positive relationships that we've had that have been helping us to advance this forward. And so I really want to thank the first place is that everybody is anticipating that there's going to be there's kind of a version 2 of the that's taking place, especially all 5 of the offshore wind developers have been in Scotia attending a conference that the county has been putting on today and tomorrow, actually. And so I was able to meet with a couple of the offshore wind companies that are anticipating using our terminal. And I think the word that I kept on hearing over and over again is that be patient. We got the leases in November. We're just staffing up right now, and we're really getting organized and getting our plans together. And stay tuned, because in the next 4, 6, 12 months, you're going to start seeing a lot more activity that's taking place.
Did you receive any input from some of the other parts of the stakeholders from the Pacific Coast who will also be doing wind energy at some future point about what they hope happens here?
Well, I think honestly, I think the most important thing that I really listened to myself was the vice chair of the Yurok tribe presented, and there was also a person from the Wiyot tribe that presented, and it was really good to hear the Humboldt County perspective. And it really, I think, caused everyone to do a self-reflection of that this is a big project for the culture and that we should all take a step back and look at this in the long term. And so that was one of the big messages that I left going away with. And it's also good to see them having a prominent role. Again, the vice chair, he had a keynote speech all to himself, that was able to outline. And then there was also one of the, I believe it was the chairman of the tribe off of Morro Bay that also was on the panel discussion as well. And so it really played a prominent role in the conference.
Good to hear that amplification of Indigenous voices, and thanks for sharing some of the takeaways. Appreciate it.
Any other staff reports? Oh, Chris, go.
Okay, so we've been busy. I don't have a lot to share tonight just because we're in that time of the year, but I am happy to report that on Monday of this week, I met with Pete Johnston, walked the Tipper Heritage Association site, not what this photos of, but when we handed the property off to them, there were some remaining items that needed to be taken care of due to some high lead concentrations. They hired a firm to do some assessment, give them recommendations. I'm happy to report they've completed all those repairs. So we'll be issuing them a letter and ultimately releasing that last little step that's hanging out there in relation to that. Today I attended via Zoom a oil spill response seminar that was put on by California Fish and Wildlife and the California Coastal Commission. And it's some new rules and regulations that are coming up for oil spill response and some recommendations of programs. It was really nice. There was a lot of surveys done. I was pretty grateful that my predecessor and the people that are here in the district before me had set up and really set us up for success. We're the only location in California that's received 2 oil spill response trailers. I learned that today. So we're the envy of many, what that's worth. We also received the replenishment grant, which you guys are aware of. So Humboldt County is doing pretty darn good on oil spill response. We looked pretty good overall. Some things to change, some things to learn, but it was a great 3 hours, I guess, spent. The picture I shared with you, the fellow over there with his hands out, his name is Ted Halstead. He and his wife, Pam, many of us know them. They are probably the best stewards of the lands around the community. They pick up trash in their little Subaru, leaving room just for themselves and their dogs all day, every day. And this is a dump on Lipscomb Slough. It's a little bit out of our territory, but all waters lead to Humboldt Bay, right? There was a stolen trailer in Arcata and all these debris, a lot of this scrap metal. There's an oil tank and other things. So we went and cleaned it up, ultimately helped to recover the fellow's trailer. There's still some missing property, but I just want to give a shout out to the Halsteads and our staff. That's Robert Proble, our maintenance manager on the left, and Cameron Christian, who's a new hire, who's in the harbor maintenance worker 2 position, that went out and manhandled that stuff. So we'll get it all recycled, and they're just working to keep the waters clean. And that's captioned from an article in the Mad River Union. Maybe some of you have already seen it, but shout out to the good work of our staff.
Yeah, Pam and Ted are phenomenal. They live in Fortuna. They've adopted the bay, and it's what they do. It's like part of who they are. Pam probably took the picture and gave credit to Ted.
And what's ironic is you could probably do that every single day. You could clean that thing out every day, and every day there's that much more. It's just you can't police it well enough. It's terrible. What happens?
Let's do garbage policy. Dump should be free.
Yeah, well,
All right.
sorry. Thanks, Chris.
Start going to HWMA meetings.
No, God. Any other reports? Mark, you have a report?
Yeah, I could just fill you in a little bit on what I've been doing. Part of what I did last month was get the annual compensation report that's due to the state controller. That's something governmental entities have to do each year. So got that out and got worked through February last month. I'm slowly catching up to where I want to be. And as you can see, March is in your packet tonight. And Mindy has April to me ready to go. So I'm hoping to get to that and get back on track where we're just, getting following month to you, on a more consistent basis. So, or the prior month to you on a more consistent basis, just, 1 month at the most beyond that cutoff. So that's what I've been working on, just trying to get caught up and back on track here.
Thank you. Good work. Thank you. I can tell you right now that we are far ahead of where we were when Patrick first signed up on this board as far as keeping up on things and I'm very, very proud of you guys. Ryan?
That's free today.
Lily? Commissioners, committees.
I actually ended up attending the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors 2x2 for Chairman Dale. But I'll let you report on it. You were there the entire time. Other than that, I did run the fireboat to lead the cruise ship up the bay, which was kind of fun and exciting. And we worked a training into for a new potential fireboat captain. And right now my boat's out of the water and I've been working every day on that. So staying busy. That's it for me.
You spray the fancy cruise ship passengers down with the hoses?
Oh, but I got the Maticat.
Okay, that's good enough.
Feel better. Oh. Yeah.
No, you attended the labor committee.
Oh,
Not,
Did
not
spray
with them
them
with the,
No, you didn't spray it down. No, you attended the meeting.
you weren't captaining the fireboat the one time you sprayed me down in a kayak. I was out there kayaking and they thought they were being funny, like with the doing the hose or the spray, like it was, hitting about 50 feet from me, but without it was all raining down on me, downpour. The stuff that wasn't. like, going on the spray.
Falls,
right?
I'm sure that was someone else.
Is this part of the report? Because I think we're off subject now.
Yeah. Oh, thanks for keeping us online. So, yes, as Chairman Newman mentioned, I was attended, we had I guess a first in a long time 2x2 committee with the county, discussed a number of topics, including what we can do to help promote development out at Samoa, including the offshore heavy lift terminal and plans on meeting regularly. That's good. Also attended labor negotiation committee and things seem to be progressing with that, with coming up with a new contract for for the union employees. And then also had the opportunity to go out to Sacramento on that for the offshore wind conference. And yeah, I was really impressed with it. It was very well attended. And as Commissioner Higgins mentioned, yes, Humboldt was on everybody's mind. Everybody was talking about Humboldt. I never heard so many people who actually knew where, or at least pretended they knew where Humboldt County was. So and yeah, it was good to hear everyone, pretty consistent talk about how, there's a lot of motivation to do the right thing by public engagement with this project and really have a robust public engagement, working with stakeholders, working with the tribes and fishermen and everyone else, building this in as green and environmentally sound manner as possible, which, I really hope to and expect to see, like, once this is built, this port is going to be something that people from all the world come to and point to as an example of how to build a modern green electric port. And I think, we have the opportunity. It's like almost a clean slate out there. I think we can do it right. And I think we have the right partners to do it right. So that is my report.
All the equipment in the port at Portland there on the Willamette River runs on vegetable oil. Not petroleum.
Yeah, speaking of
Sorry.
community engagement, I'm the commissioner for Division 4s, which is Eureka and parts of the peninsula. So I met with the Peninsula Community Collaborative last week. And it included some folks from RCA and a number of people from the collaborative, but also Robin Stewart was there from the Sierra Club, and Carolyn Griffiths from the North Coast Environmental Center, and Amy Jester from Core Hub, and Alex Charon from Eureka. So it was a multi-interest group, and I just got to hear more about Core Hub, and we have staff and commissioners who attend that on a regular basis, and we've been hearing a lot about it. But just I got to hear more about community benefits agreements and mitigation, and when we looked back through the memorandum that we all agreed to for the concerning offshore wind development off the west coast of the United States and around Humboldt Bay, and looked at some of those whereases. And so I think they're looking at us as a good partner, and they're eager to see where the rubber is going to hit the road in terms of where we actually do that. I think that this isn't something that was discussed, but I reviewed that resolution, and one part in the resolution for a community benefit is that we're really going to let the county take the lead. And so I'm looking for a better understanding of where we can empower local communities and community benefit through some of the activities that we have, rather than and not thinking of it as something that we're just going to default to the county to do it all and to do our part of it where we can, and that will evolve over time. I'm not making any suggestions or recommendations at this point, but I just wanted to let you all know that I had met with those folks, and probably will continue to, as they're my main constituents that I'm to be representing while I'm sitting in this chair.
Could I add one more thing?
No.
Okay, thank you. No, I just want to, I read in the Lost Coast Outpost that one of the leaseholders, and I'm sure we're going to see much more of this, but one of the leaseholders, RWE, committed to a $10,000 a year annual donation to Food for People. And I just really want to publicly congratulate them on that. I mean, Food for People is an excellent organization. I think that was a great thing to do, like right off the bat. I mean, the leases haven't even been finalized, so they're actually all tentative leaseholders. None of them actually are full leaseholders yet till Bohm signing some piece of paper, but that's a good thing.
Thank you for that. Thanks for saying that. Patrick. Well, went to the Humboldt Bay Harbor Economic Development Association meeting, and it's kind of a celebration now that we're at the end of the new market tax credit. And it'll be interesting to see how that vehicle is of service for economic development on the peninsula and around the bay in the future. Bounced, finally kind of got out of the, got unchained from my desk and showed up in Covelo, and we had a student art show where all the students at Round Valley Elementary decorated the Library Commons building, and that stayed up for the rest of April. Then I was out in Covelo for Earth Day, and it was divine. Covelo gets a reputation as kind of a rough place, but I was there for Earth Day and also for a party for Richard Wilson. And on a day when the sun shines in spring, it's one of the most beautiful places on the planet. And there's an awful lot of forward-looking people, and I think they're going to rise from the challenging times of the present and flourish into the future. And I also went to the Caddo Earth Day over in Laytonville. That was a couple of days later. And I was able to announce that the Eel River Recovery Project, my group, has won a $5.9 million CAL FIRE grant. And we're going to do like 60 jobs are going to be created. We're going to do forest health on the Caddo Indian Reservation. We're going to get Caddo tribal members jobs. And then we're going to use our traditional ecological knowledge to restore the whole basin, and they can make a buck on the way. And we'll all benefit in the long term because it won't burn up. And it's going to be more water and fish. And it's going to be more acorns and animals and harmony in general. And so it's starting in northern Mendocino. I feel very lucky with the recovery project to be able to also help the youth and help them understand that, now is the time for forest health, and now is the time to get a career in forest health. And you don't have to get a PhD. You can learn how to use a saw and become an ecological technician, not just chopping down trees, but restoring the landscape, and have a ride from here on out.
You know, that's the wave of the money. There needs to be like nonprofits, more vehicles to get that money, because. But as long as it's gonna, you know, we have firestorms, it's gonna rain money, so it's honk. Thank you, Greg.
Absolutely. And I thanks for that, Pat. I have brought that for you.
Oh, hole in the
All
wall.
right. We stopped there last
Rattlesnake
night
Creek.
and I took that picture for you. So I too attended the California Offshore Wind Conference. Different than last year, certainly different than last year. We have developers now that have bids. Which I think Stephen's observation, all the developers that I spoke with or their staff, I guess staff and developer is the same thing. But I found them to be really pretty in touch with what's going on and where we're at and who we are, as California goes. I enjoyed talking to them. It is a business, all right? They aren't doing this out of the kindness of their heart, so they don't have to be really as in tune with California or people or our needs as they are. So I found them, I found that I like them and I like their intentions and their thoughts. I thought they had good thoughts. There are a couple things that the nuggets that I walked away with is procurement of that, which is what's going to drive this whole thing, and that's basically a power purchase agreement. Procurement of that power is what's going to be the next milestone that's really going to turn things loose. And with that comes transmission, distribution, transmission. And I think transmission is there's some really smart people. A couple of them are our people that are working on this. In fact, I think our people, and I will just say his name, Arnie, is probably one of the most well-informed individuals in the whole entire state about where things are going, what things are doing. We're very fortunate to have Shots Energy and Arnie Jacobson. So I think we're getting close, and I think in the next 6, 8, 10 months, before this year is over, hopefully, we will have another watershed moment that will provide the opportunity for the developers to have procurement, and that's going to be when it gets crazy again. When the DoD said it's okay to put windmills off the coast of California, it opened everything up. It got everybody excited around the world, and they started coming here talking to us about a dock. They started talking about leases. They got the call areas done. They finished the call areas. We have bidders and we have leases that are issued. The next thing is they got to have someplace to sell the power. We're going to get there. There's a lot of, you feels like everything's going really slow, and you don't really hear a lot about it, but there's some really smart people working on this. And I'd like to include from the port side of it. And I mean, and who'd have thought this, but Larry Octor is really freaking smart. Okay. He doesn't look it. But he is doing some pretty spectacular work, and it's fun to watch. So that's my report. And it is going on there. They are still talking workforce development is going on right now. I think that's where Rob's at. So that's all I have to report. And I know we have a little league game that needs to get going. So we have no old business, and we're going to move into new business. Consider approving, and I am so pleased to do this, consider approving the Nordic Aqua Farms lease amendment number 4. Larry, Ryan, who's talking about this?
I will. Can you move the next one, Mindy?
And I hate that picture with that billboard in it, just being my,
I was thinking
being my
the
Mike,
exact
my Mike Wilson. Voice, but whatever.
Okay, so staff recommends that the board approve lease amendment number four with Nordic Aqua Farms. And so I wanted to go over some of the key provisions of this lease. Is basically we're switching into basically a month-to-month status, and that month-to-month status will backdate to October 1st, 2022. And what that will mean is that they will be paying us $25,645 back to October 1st, 2022. So a little over $200,000 will be receiving a check within the next couple of weeks for that would get us up to current. And then there'll be an annual CPI increase starting October 1st, 2023 that would come into play. And we're in month-to-month status until they exercise and decide to go into permanent lease status. And most likely that will occur when they receive their permits for their coastal development permits and their water board permit that's pending. And so when we get into that rent status, then the rent will increase to either whatever the option fee is with the CPI increases as they escalate, or $354,000 per year, whichever is higher. And just to make sure I'm clear, is that the 25,645 times 12 or $354,000, whichever is highest. Could you go to the next slide, Mindy? And so then the next big thing is that as part of the current lease agreement, we had committed to lease to them the utilization of 20 megawatts of the substation. What's going to happen is the Harbor District will retain 10 megawatts for our own purposes. And again, our plan is to use it for the new heavy lift marine terminal or some of the other uses that we may want to do. And so Nordic will use about 50% less power than they were previously doing. And then we're correspondingly reducing the amount that they were going to pay us by 50% to an amount of $278,000. Now we'll receive that payment when it kicks into full lease status. We won't receive that at this point until it goes into lease status, and then we'll receive a check for $278,000 for that. We're also modifying the lease to remove the existing shops and stores building and machine building. And that's for a variety of different purposes, but it really works in the Harbor District's favor from my perspective, is that we have approximately about 30,000 square feet in that building that we'll be able to lease out now that it's no longer tied up with the Nordic Aqua Farms project. And so we'll be looking for some additional tenants, and that could bring in some additional revenue beyond the other revenue that we wouldn't have received. Another important factor on that is that we, as part of the new market tax credits, almost 7 years ago to the date, we put on a brand new roof, new siding, redid the electrical system in the building. And so that building is in really, really good shape. And so it's great that we're getting that building back, and we're going to really be able to capitalize on some additional investments that the Harbor District previously had. And then the machine building, it needs a lot of work, but it's also a diamond in the rough. And so staff will be looking at that building, which again is about 30,000 square feet. And we'll be looking at that over the next year or two of what are the types of investments that we need to do to, again, attract additional businesses to go into that facility. And then there's the clarification that when you drive in and you go by the substation, and then where the black liquors were stored in the silos, there's the roadway. Well, that roadway is really the definition of where the Nordic lease boundary is, but that's also our access road. And so as part of the agreement, we really clarified, and this was in the original lease agreement, but it wasn't crystal clear. And we really clarified that we retained the right of way to use that to access our warehouse and our dock from the Vance Avenue property. It's kind of a shared access road to do. And that was really one of those important long-term things that we're always kind of looking out for, to how do we maximize the use of our property in the long term. And then the district is also going to be able to retain $43,750 that Nordic held on deposit. And that money was originally held on deposit in case the Harbor District lost leasehold revenue, while Nordic was in the option payments and primarily associated with the shops and stores building. And so we're going to be able to keep that $43,000 and essentially zero that off the books, which I'm sure your Mark Witzel is going to appreciate that as well. And so those are the primary terms that I wanted to go over on this lease agreement. It's overall, I think it's a win-win with Nordic and the Harbor District. Both parties are really satisfied with this agreement. And at the end of the day, you know, you have a good agreement when both parties go away and each side gave up certain things. And at the end, if both sides are happy with what they've negotiated and we negotiated in good faith. And I firmly believe that that we have a deal that is in the best interest of the Harbor District. And it's something that we can look forward to in the long term, but also enables Nordic Aqua Farms a little bit more time to get the discretionary permits that they need to then make the capital investments to tear down all the building and eventually clean up the property and to create the jobs and make the tax increment investments that we all want to see in the community. And so that's my staff recommendation.
So move.
I have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion from the board?
Took a while to get here, but good job.
did.
It was painful.
I've only been on the board for, since January, so I've been seeing two different amendments. And so I've been a short timer. I'm in the last lap here, but some of you have been doing this since 2019. And so my hat's off to you all in staying flexible, being creative and making it work in the end. So obviously we can support this.
Commend the staff for hard work to consummate to this point.
I gotta say, Nordic's been a pretty good partner in all this process and they've worked well with us. It's sometimes takes a lot of grit to get to where we're at and on both sides, our staff, their staff, they worked it out and thanks to both of you for doing it. It's not sometimes fun, but it's nobody took it personal. I think everybody went along quite well and came to I think is a fair agreement. So anybody from the audience care to comment on our lease to Nordic Aqua Farms? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any more comment? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Motion passes. Good luck, Ryan.
Good night.
Thanks, Ryan.
Good job, everybody. Happy dance.
Don't swing at the high outside.
Chris, I'll let you do this one.
All right, moving on to item B. 11B, consider adopting resolution number 2023-08, approving and adopting a debt management policy.
So move.
Second.
Do a report on this?
Yeah, so, sorry.
Go ahead.
Good. So before you, what we have is a resolution 2308 to approve and adopt a debt management policy for the district. The California Debt and Investment Advisory Council, CDAC, has some parameters that, as of I believe it's 2016, we're required to have on file a debt management policy, and that applies to anybody that's going to be issuing public debt. So we have present tonight Cameron Weist, who is from the Weist Law Firm, who is advising us on this. He is our bond counsel services, and also Andrew Flynn from Cal Muni Advisors, who is our municipal advisor. And in essence, the package is before you, and the debt management policy is in there, and it specifies quite specifically the parameters in which we will manage our affairs when it comes to installment sale of debt or other debts. And so if there's specific questions, I may pull in Cameron and Andrew. But in a nutshell, that is what's before you. So we'd like you to adopt resolution 2023-08 approving the Humboldt Bay Harbor Recreation Concert District debt management policy.
Are they gonna talk?
If we have questions,
Oh, if they have questions, okay. Any discussion from the board?
Well, when you're gonna move and shake on finances, this is the kind of foundation that you need. So, gotta turn all the cards up in government financing or participation in any kind of loans, and this looks quite thorough.
I wonder, if it would be possible to just give either yourself or, the gentleman on the screen, just a really quick summary of the main points of the debt management policy that we're adopting here. 'Cause it is very thorough, and so just if there's any like salient points.
yeah, we have Cameron present tonight to participate.
He's gonna sit on the phone this long, he might as well talk for a second.
I mean,
Yeah.
definitely, use this for bedtime reading. There's an awful lot of
Oh, yeah.
different types of loans that we might consider.
You can tell we get paid by the pound, so sorry about that, but yeah, so what's before you, as Chris mentioned, is this policy that it really is derived from a lot of years of work in the industry, just kind of taking various policies for various agencies and crafting it for the harbor's needs. So in there is just a lot of procedure and protocol things to think about for staff to think about when they're looking to execute on each transaction. Predominantly, you're looking to make sure that things that investors look for, that rating agencies look for, as far as credit quality and credit management, are best practices and adhered to throughout your process. I can honestly say that the district abides by all these, but it's just to have it formalized in a policy. And I think it's good for continuity for boards and staff to adopt a policy. The law actually requires it now, as Chris mentioned. If you're going to enter into a debt transaction, I think it was Chris said 16, it's right around there, the transition to 16, 17, which you haven't been out for a debt issuance from that time. So this will be your first debt issuance, the next item on the agenda. But if there's any specific questions in here, I'm happy to answer them. It's just, as I said, this is really just the culmination of a lot of different policies that we crafted over the years, along with Andrew Flynn is on the line as well from CalMuni Advisors, who gave us his comments prior to releasing it out for distribution here generally. So yes, happy to answer any questions that the board might have though.
So if I could just add one thing, is that to point out one thing is on page 44 of your packet, it's something that Andrew and Chris and I have talked a lot about, which is, and we've been discussing at the board level, which is the debt service reserve fund. And the need to maintain these reserve funds, and then within the policy are basically some amounts that we should keep within this policy. And we've been hammering this home over and over and over again about the need for us to make sure that we have adequate reserves. And it's something that you're going to see on the next item, the covenants within the loan, is that we maintain certain debt coverage ratios, and that we have reserve funds, and then how you can use reserve funds to make sure that you have sufficient cash on hand. But this is really one of those. There's other components, but this is one of the main ones that we very closely monitor. And it's really important that we maintain our cash reserve funds.
I'd be interested in hearing from Larry or other of the financiers, just a little bit more of the relationship of the Harbor District's debt relative to capital improvement programs. What are we looking for? What are we trying to achieve there? Well, I can say that from a legal perspective, you're looking to make sure that all your covenants are adhered to. Your predominant covenants that are your
the promises that you're making to whoever the investors are in these obligations, you're saying that you, as Larry mentioned, that number one, you're going to go ahead and have enough reserves and enough cash flow coverage, which is called net revenue coverage. So this is a defined legal definition within all your debt documents to date, which essentially net revenues is defined as your total revenues less your M&O. You get to that net revenue number, and you've made promises to cover your debt service, your collective debt service, in a fiscal year by 125%. So that allows you to keep a good credit rating, to keep, as we say, best practices, and it also allows you to incur future indebtedness, because then all future lenders are going to be on a parity basis. They're going to be on equal footing, and they're going to be willing to lend to the district. So it's very important from a covenant perspective to make sure that those are monitored and managed on an annual basis. And the district has been good at doing that. We've run pro formas, both historicals and pro formas. Andrew Flynn's on the line. He's got all that material that shows what your coverages have been, what they look like in the future, given certain inflationary assumptions within expenses and revenues, growth within each category, on about a 5-year look forward basis. That's kind of typical in our industry. So again, what Larry mentioned is those are the primary covenants that sort of are at the heart of debt transactions, because there's a lot of other things, of course, that you have to be mindful of. And we're going to cover some of that in the next item, because you're going to be exploring a debt transaction. So there's some legal documents associated with that process. But as far as the policy goes, it's really designed to keep, as I was saying, staff and this board and future boards sort of aware of its policy decisions and how it's going to go about its business of managing covenants and promises to its collective group of investors, so that you maintain good credit ratings, good credit status, and just good sound fundamental fiscal practices going forward.
Thank you.
And so this meets all of the requirements under Government Code Section 8855I.
Correct.
Is this a standardized policy for all government entities, special districts and such?
No, it's really not. I think it's, it's specific to the type of, for example, what we might, prepare for a county or a city is much different than an enterprise fund. And even within the enterprise fund categories, it's much different, even in those categories. A water agency may do things a lot different than a harbor. But I can say that some of the covenants, like there are typically in an enterprise fund agency, like a harbor district, it's very traditional to issue debt with that parity covenant, the rate covenant, to make sure that you can issue future debt without getting into a dilemma of issuing one-off debt without a solution for the future. So that is uniformly found in the policies. It's just how do you characterize the duties, and how does the board want to characterize its and staff's duties going forward? So these are, I would say it's semi-customized. Just when I say semi is because it would be fully customized, but we use a base template from other similar type agencies, and then we bring it forward and then invite staff and team concepts to get it kind of fully baked.
Thank you.
I have one more question. It's section 10 training. At the end here on page 48. Good policy is only as good as the people who are running it and are understanding of it. Can you be a little more specific about the kind of training that you would recommend that staff and commissioners have to best implement this policy?
Sure. So, our office, we are available to conduct, training, 1-hour Zoom seminars to go through specific covenants, your specific covenants, and just to remind, what the duties are, what the promises are, et cetera. There are also some good conferences that we would be able to, if you're interested, to kind of direct you to some areas. The one thing you in the future, because you are anticipating probably some more growth, given your wind farm, you know, inclinations in terms of having to, you know, big money financing that's going to be, whether they're power purchase arrangements or tax credits, or otherwise, you're going to most likely be incurring additional obligations of some sort, right? So likely you may end up encountering a public offering scenario. And this is a private placement where we went out on an RFP to the banking community throughout the United States and asked for, you know, banking bids. But on larger projects, and that typically means anything over $10 million, 7 to 10 million, it's more advantageous to go out to the public market. Now, when you do that, you have to also have what's called a public offering statement, and that statement is much like a stock offering, and it has a lot of disclosure and a lot of responsibilities written into the legal documents and into that disclosure document. And so when you're looking at section 10, there's the word in there that you'll see disclosure counsel. That's a definition that just means that, okay, if you have a public transaction, there are other duties and other responsibilities that need to be managed and maintained into the future. There's this thing called continuing disclosure, and it's governed through the state of California, and it's also required by the SEC. And so it's an obligation that annually needs to be done if you're to go into the public market. Now, this private placement, the bank has said, we don't need all that. So I'm not talking about now, I'm talking about in the future for training purposes. But if you see seminars on continuing disclosure, that would be some verbiage that you would be looking for, or you know, how to properly you know, how board members can help with public offerings and do, you know, a public, you know, how to anticipate or anything. But we can give some staff some specific recommendations of different, there's a lot of great seminars and webinars that are out there for these things to start a learning curve, to build up a learning curve, which undoubtedly the board is going to start to have to watch out for if you ever do go to a public issuance. So, but as far as the bank world goes, and the documents that are going to be before you on the next item, and then your previous two items that you have debt on your books right now, there are also obligations there and promises. And as I said, that is something that we can just do in-house if you're interested, or you can. There are some seminars and webinars for like bond basics, you know, that go into a lot of those discussions, which are very helpful. They're very useful. So,
if I may, I'm just going to be really simple. Good evening, directors. CDAC, who governs this, actually puts out a lot of really good information. So if you're just curious, it's a great place to start. They have a debt primer book that it's very broad, but it covers a lot of great information. And it's that type of information. Then there's, as Cameron was alluding to, a lot of very specific training programs that they will do, but then the industry does as well. So there's a lot of great information out there. A lot of people have done really yeoman's work on providing training. So a lot of great resources, you know, whether it's for staff or for directors who are interested in, you know, learning more.
Thank you. I appreciate those responses. I'm a new commissioner, and I'm also on the finance committee, so I've got a steeper curve than maybe some at this table. It seems to me that you understand us, that this isn't just a template, that it seems that you've really tailored it to who we are as a district, and that you're anticipating some pretty strong growth and maybe incurring even more debt than ever before as an agency. So I guess my last question is, how scalable is this as we grow? Do you see us as revamping this policy when we hit some certain threshold of debt or just operational budgets, or is this going to move?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't foresee it at this point, because the nature of this policy can handle anything from a small couple of small transactions like you have right now to growth to several $100 million and beyond, right? Because these are core industry solid practices that we're utilizing for you. We are anticipating growth, and when I say customize this for you, we took the template that we would use for a large county, right? And we started from there. We paired it back to make it work for you, but the scalability is built in here for you. There's no doubt about that. Obviously, you may want to tinker with it from time to time, but it certainly can handle what you're going to need to do.
Thank you.
All right, any more comments from the board? Any comments? Anybody in the audience would like to comment on this item? Well, I, for one, will take my name off the list of attending a training class on this. I will nominate you to go to that.
Resolution. Not that I want to, it's that I have to.
Yeah, no, I probably should
I can
too.
only allow myself to be so stupid.
I wanna look at Mark and see if Mark has any comments.
No, it's a required item, then I think it's a good thing to have, even if it wasn't required, so, yeah. I don't have anything specific to say about that.
Very good, thank you. So we have a motion and a second, is that correct?
And it's a resolution.
And it's a roll call vote.
Did you open it up to the public?
I did.
Okay. Commissioner Newman,
Yes.
Commissioner Higgins,
Yep.
Commissioner Benson,
Yes.
Vice President Coleman,
Yes.
and President Dale.
Yes. All right, motion passes. All right, let's move on to item 11C, which is going to be implementing this policy by spending money. Or borrowing money, I guess. Consider adopting resolution 2023-09, approving the form of and authorizing an installment sale agreement, providing for the financing of the district's dredging and property acquisition projects, and providing for other matters properly related thereto.
So moved. Seconds.
All right,
And I was so happy that they referred to this as a small
yeah. So the policy is scalable.
loan.
So we're gonna borrow 750 million for the dock. We'll be able to use that policy.
So earlier this spring, we issued an RFP for a revenue installment sale and pledging district revenues to borrow money for the purposes of dredging Whidley Island Marina and a property acquisition and potential consideration for other capital improvement projects. This is a item that was reviewed in our last board meeting. We brought back a proposal from Signature Public Finance Corporation, and they made us an offer that's quite attractive given the current markets. And so staff's recommending the board adopt resolution 2023-09, authorizing and directing the execution of an installment sale agreement, which will provide for the finance of the district's dredging and property acquisition. So it fulfills our initial intentions. A little bit of summary on the loan and what's here. It's a little reminder from last time. Most importantly, right now is we're in a very tight window to close, and that's how these work. The principal value of the loan will be $5,454,000, and that value will provide for the expenses related to issuing the debt, as well as the monies needed for the projects that were contained in the offering. The interest rate, it was 4.25%. It's a fixed rate. It does not change. It's a fully amortized loan over a period of 15 years. We're able to do that because of the type of offering that it is. As talked about earlier, the debt coverage ratio is set at 1.25 to 1 or 125%, which is in parity with our existing debt. And we have the opportunity to prepay this debt at any point in time upon prior notice to the bank. However, there's a 1.5% prepayment penalty. Ultimately, that declines over time to zero. And so that is the agreement that's before you. Again, we have the same cast of us present for any questions that are out there. These are the next steps in moving this forward. Just a reminder that we'll be bringing this back to the board for a final resolution, I believe, to issue or the final signing, likely at a special meeting at the end of this month.
So most importantly is that on the dredging, if the board approves this loan, we met with on the dredging side of the equation. We met on Monday, met with the city of Eureka and Chevron and Green Diamond about continuing the dialogue about going out to bid as jointly. We transmitted the RFP that we had prepared, request for proposals for dredging, over to SHN to finalize that. We have a follow-up meeting on Monday with Eureka and Chevron. We're hoping to finalize whether they're going to go out. And then we'd like to put the RFP out by the end of next week. If the board approves this action. And so that's kind of the schedule on the dredging component. And then on the real property acquisition side, our plan is to close escrow per the contractual agreement by May 31st of this year. And so if you take this action, 2023. So within the next couple of weeks, we will have put in motion everything that's associated with this lending.
Very nice. Thank you. Any comments, discussion from the board?
Can I just interject one
Yes.
item? Chris made a statement that it's going to come back to the board prior to signing. Chris, I know we hadn't had a chance to talk about that exact element, but it's the way it's written right now because of the term sheet that we have. There's a closing deadline of May 24th. And the way that the resolution is written, it authorizes senior staff and vice president to basically handle the signing. So if the board is comfortable with what's in front of you this evening, you're going to be approving the form, the substantial form of the main document that needs to be signed to transact this loan closing. And so I just want to make that clear that it will, unless staff and board wants to have a special meeting prior to the closing to make sure that you have one more say in it. Otherwise, the way it's written and it's typical protocol, the way we do this is we come to you with the substantially final form of the agreement, which is what you're looking at. And then you're authorizing president and senior staff to make sure to get it done. And then we can come back after the fact and disclose results to make sure it's all. But as long as we're within the parameters of what's laid out right now, the way the resolution reads is that is what's on the agenda, and the closing would happen on May 24th in line with the term sheet that Flagstar Signature signed with the district. But I defer to everyone, but I wanted to make that point just because that's what is in the resolution right now.
I like that, Cameron. Thank you very much for that. We don't have to have another special meeting this month.
Yeah, I would support not having a special meeting. If having the president and Larry, I would like to be present just because I'm on the finance committee and I just want to understand all these things that go through, but I've got available time.
Perfect. All right, so we have a motion, a second. We have the board comments. Anybody from the audience care to comment on this? Seeing none, we will bring it back for a roll call vote.
Commissioner Newman,
Yes.
Commissioner Higgins,
Yeah.
Commissioner Benson,
Yes.
Vice President Coleman,
Yes.
and President Dale.
Yes. All right. So I'm assuming we're going to be signing something here soon. Thank you for that, Cameron and Andrew.
Thank you, guys.
It's our pleasure. And yeah, we will be this is the final document. There's going to be a few, T's to cross and I's to dot, but nothing material is going to change in what you've been presented. There are closing certificates that are standard to memorialize some of the points that are in the installment sale agreement for your protection to make sure that there's a full, understanding of the arrangement with the bank. And yes, those documents have already been drafted. They are going to be circulated probably tomorrow, actually, So we're well underway, and to the extent that finance committee and staff want to have a Zoom call and go through prior to signing, I think that's very appropriate. We can just, sit down and kind of bring the documents up on the screen and go through them quickly so that there's a comfort level for that. But I, again, will defer to staff and as to protocol on that. But certainly we're well underway, and we look forward to, a smooth closing here for the board here.
Thank you very much. Thanks for spending your evening with us as well. All right, we're moving on to, I'll let Larry decide if he wants to organize that. And Craig and I and Larry can figure that out. We're gonna move on to 11D. Review of the preliminary budget and goals for Redwood Dock, Redwood Marine Terminal 2, and dredging.
So again, staff, this is not necessarily an approval item. This is just reviewing it with us and providing direction if there's anything specific regarding our preliminary budget goals for Redwood Marine Terminal or Redwood Dock, Redwood Marine Terminal 1, 2, and dredging. And so got a few slides here to go through with you, and really this is kind of the plan of what we will do. A quick reminder that these are not the everyday repairs and maintenance expense. These are our major projects that we would do. We have our budget for our recurring repairs and maintenance. Okay, so at Marine Terminal 1, knowing that this is a short-term site, however, we want to make sure that we are servicing the tenants that are in place now. We have quite a bit of road improvements. Each year you've seen a value in here near $1,000 for grading the road, but right now we've got some pretty significant things we need to do to the road so we can access the site. We're grubbing maintaining the south acreage. That's because we've done a lot of work out there to prepare for our heavy lift marine terminal and some of the studies and testing that happens out there. We have some more work that'll be done, so we need to keep that area clean and accessible. That also includes the mowing and the maintaining of the Samoa lagoons. We tie that into this property, so that's the value presented there, $5,000. The Redwood Dock itself needs some dock repairs to keep it serviceable for the foreseeable future, and also some repairs at Red Tank Dock. Well, we don't know the long-term disposition of Red Tank Dock. It currently is used periodically by some of our aquaculture tenants. So we want to make sure that we are keeping that in serviceable condition. Deferrals is the power switch station. We all know about the bird interactions with the wires there. It seems like every year we're hit with one. So we're not putting it in the budget per se. Maybe that's some good energy that it won't happen. But I just want to make it aware to everybody that, we could get hit with that as we did last year. So. Redwood Marine Terminal 2, we have pier and dock improvements of about $15,000. That is mainly the connection to the portion, the finger that Taylor Mariculture occupies, and that's also railings on the dock and a couple of the power light poles that need to be replaced. There's pier and gate fencing to keep that secure. An access road paving and maintenance project, that is not only the gravel road coming into RMT2 that's closer to the Bayside, but also the paved road that comes in, also known as Vance Avenue. And we look to cooperate with some of our neighboring property owners to do some patching and repairs on that road. Site cleanup and disposal costs. This is substantially down from where it was in years past, because for the most part, we've got everything done. There are still some things that are maintaining in the machine building and in the shops and stores building. So now with the action taken with North Aqua Farms and us getting permanent possession over that and going to be releasing it, we're going to have to spend a little bit of money there to get that ready for lease. The outfall inspection and anode replacement will be done this year, and $65,000. We are still shopping that and will continue to, but that's our proposed budget. Once that's done, or in tandem with that, actually, we flush the outfall line. That's part of the process when the divers are out there. And then we need to work on our perimeter fences. We've lost a lot of fencing this past year. We did have a great benefit. The folks that bought the parcel just to the north of us installed an entire perimeter fence around their side. So the north side of our property for, I don't know, probably about 420 feet, got a whole brand new fence. So we lucked out there. We want to install electric submeters and to help us submeter our electrical. We talked about this here at Woodley Island. We've talked about it in other properties. But this is a substantial ability for us to expend these funds and then gain this back in revenue by billing for the energy that's used out there. We are able to bill for energy in our current and existing leases. It's done on a pro rata share with many of the tenants. So this is a very large recapture. We are going to be gentle in how we roll this out because this will change the dynamics with the tenants. So we're going to make sure we do it in a fashion that's phased and reasonable and manageable for everyone. Stormwater, the good news is a lot of the stormwater system there is already closed. We have had no stormwater issues. We have a very good BMP practice in place. And but these are just materials. This year we'll have to replace all of our BMP materials. And then we're keeping our dewatering area maintained. Well, we aren't going to be using it for dewatering this year. There's been talks of others that could potentially use it. So we just want to keep it in good repair so it has a future value to us if we were able to find beneficial reuse of dredge materials. So that's the total spend, $125,500, or the ask anyways. There's some deferrals here in the next slide. And the deferrals include $15,000 that we won't be spending on the pier and dock. You'll remember that we have a value in there from the previous slide. This is what we think we can do in the coming year. Let me correct that. We could defer to the next fiscal year. The smokestack and boiler building do not have the lights on them for aircraft. That is a VFR light area. They are not functional, and we have worked diligently to try to find something that can make them functional, and we have not been able or to be successful with it. So we're still exploring that. Again, this is one of those placeholders. If we can find the ability to do that, it will have to happen at some point in time, or perhaps everything will line up. We'll get some permits in place and we'll begin the demolition with Nordic, but that's an item that's on there. And then fence repairs. I put a value of half of what we need to do in fence repairs on there. I think there's some parts that we've looked at as a staff and feel that we can keep it standing tall for enough time. So those are the deferrals. But those are desirable. If you want to find some extra money somewhere, we'll be happy to take it. The next slide is dredging. And so we've talked about this a lot, but our preliminary budget, and I believe all these quantities are correct as of the last discussions we've had, our Woodley Island Marina base dredge bid is for 65,000 cubic yards at a cost of about $2.5 million. And we plan for the 1 foot over dredge. We've discussed that, we could pay for as much as 1 foot over. If the contractor was to go more, that would not be an expense to us. We do not earn this expense if they don't go over, but this is up to a 1 foot over dredge taken as a survey once the dredging is completed, the before and after, if you will. We budgeted $500,000 for a total dredging budget of $3 million. And that, I believe, is the report.
Could you briefly elaborate on the ocean outfall expenditures just a little bit to make sure that people are aware of what we're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So our marine ocean outfall line is, I think most of us know, goes $1 million or $1.5 million. Take a step back. It goes 1.5 miles into the Pacific Ocean. And it requires maintenance. It has a few different things. So it has diffusers. Most of those are closed right now, and those are ports that are open or closed to allow for a certain amount of volume or flow to go through the line. The marine outfall line is known to get sanded in. And so for that reason, it has a process to clean it. Typically, we've used our fireboat, and that's like a giant power washer, if you will. Divers take instruments down there and find the pipe first and foremost, do a general inspection of the joints of the pipe, the different sections of the pipe, may or not replace anodes, which essentially are the zincs that will go on the pipe. When they're down there, we typically do a flush. So once we've got a count, we found diffusers, we found the pipe, we found any debris and gotten those removed. Then at that point in time, part of the jetting is also to have us flush the pipe, where we run as much as 500,000 gallons of water. It's industrial water that runs through our tank. We work in tandem with Humboldt Bay Municipal Water District to get that done. The other part of that is a requirement of our state lands commission lease and operating there. So we have a responsibility to inspect the marine outfall line periodically. So we get a report from the diver. In the past, we've used Vic Marianic, I believe is how you say his last name. Mark 10. Thank you. I've never known his last name. It's spelled a little differently. No, I appreciate it. I've wanted to know, and I never think about asking Vic when he's here. He's retired, but we do have a Theory Marine, a diving service that's frequently in Humboldt Bay. Incidentally, they have a sister boat to our Moose boat. And so Brayton and his group have expressed an interest, but we are continuing to look at that process. And of course, we'll have to go out and secure the contractor. We'll have to put our proposal together and get it out to folks. Right now, we're gathering data and we're trying to see if we can potentially do it with Nordic. If they have servicing, they have some studies and work they need to do. And so it's obviously in our best interest to do it with someone else and not just go out solo. You think that's a good coverage?
That was an excellent coverage. If I could just add one thing.
Is there still boiler out there that we're gonna sell at some point? And if scrap ever comes up, is it worth anything, or is that just like, that just floated into the dead issue category?
Well, there's a couple issues there. One, we had some responsibilities potentially, which I think are now expired, to pay back to the EPA if we sold any of the equipment.
Oh, so we'll just give them the boiler.
Yeah, and we didn't have, we didn't
Pick up.
we didn't have any takers. At the same time, that's a big part of reducing the construction costs with Nordic, is the amount of salvage that would come out of there. So if Nordic is to proceed, there's going to be a value there in the demolition where there would be salvage and reduce those demolition costs. So that's the current plan.
Yeah, but I mean, so in the whole cycle of things, metal could go back up at some point, and then that becomes an asset again. But right now, you can't chop it up and make a buck off it, because like just moving it isn't worth the value of materials.
We did move, as you all will recall, last year we were able to, we had a unique situation where metal values were just prime, and we were able to get rid of two very large ships. Very large vessels at Phil's Landing Boatyard, and we got those disposed of fee neutral. We had some costs for the things that couldn't go into the recycling bins that we had to pay to dispose of. It was, once in a career opportunity is sometimes how you see it. That was where metal prices were. We'd love to see metal prices back. We have a great salvage contractor. Believe me, he calls no less than once every other week, and he is always looking for scrap, always looking for metal. And he's figured out a way to make a little bit of money at it. Right now, a trip of just municipal waste, $1,650 to get it over to the facility. Last year at this time, it was about $925. So it's almost, as the values have gone down, the costs have gone way up. And municipal waste, of course, isn't a recyclable product, but it's still the same, mode of transportation. Just to give you a little bit of color on that. Yep.
Fuel costs, it's just like they each up.
Correct, Doctor?
But I kind of feel like I was kind of part of the historical team here. Remind us we still have that thing out there.
How deep of water is the end of the outfall pipe? Commissioner Dale and I were.
20 fathoms, 30 fathoms. Nope,
Yeah, 20, 30.
mile and a half.
It's in like 18 fathoms, something like that.
20 fathoms, Just
Yeah,
say
it's
20.
like 100 feet.
20 fathoms. That sounds
120
right.
feet of that.
Yeah, I
That's
think it's
right.
140 feet in the deepest point,
Is it?
I think, approximately.
I was right, I was right.
22
No,
fathoms.
you're
So
40 feet, so it's not.
At the deepest,
25.
it's just a little deep.
part of what we get with the inspection is a full written narrative of the actions that we're taking, and we actually get photographs underwater. And we have the dive logs. I mean, it's some of the things we can get. We don't always get them. We've done it twice in the time that I've been with the district. But all of that data and the amount of time the divers are down, every bit of that is cataloged in this report. We look at the executive summary, right? That's the piece and parts that we need.
I
But we
remember
can-
looking at some photos and
Uh-huh.
the report last time.
So part of why I wanted to bring up, and I thought Chris did an outstanding job, but just kind of looking forward, as you recall, when Nordic Aqua Farms comes online, the board adopted a rate study. And as part of the lease agreement that is included in this, when Nordic starts discharging out the pipe, then we will be charging them a user fee that will help to recover some of our expenditures. And then also we have a capital improvement program that we have laid into the replacement. And so this is all part of our long-term maintenance of these facilities. As you get additional users to do those, then they help to pay those expenditures. We're not quite there yet. And then the second thing is with the Nordic Aqua Farms project is what we were kind of counting on, but it just doesn't seem like this is going to happen, is that because the item was appealed, Nordic was going to do baseline biological monitoring. And so preliminarily, the discussion was we were going to get the divers to go out there. They were going to coordinate the biological monitoring, the baseline monitoring for the ocean outfall discharge that was outlined in the environmental impact report. And this is again how we were going to coordinate and reduce costs by doing the biological monitoring, which is required for the ocean outfall. I'm sorry, for the wastewater treatment plant, the DG Fairhaven, and the Nordic Aqua Farms NPDS permits from the water board all require them because they're the dischargee to do biological monitoring. Now, Nordic was going to do baseline monitoring before they started to discharge. That's what they agreed because it was going to be a couple of years before they started to discharge. So they were going to do biological monitoring ahead of time. Again, we were really hoping that they would have their permits, they would start doing this biological monitoring. We could share the cost of the divers and the inspections and then have the divers go down and do ours. It would be different, but there's a lot of duplication of things that you can and synergies that you can share on these. And then also we had it set up so that Nordic, the wastewater treatment plant, and DG Fairhaven would all go together on the biological monitoring and split the cost to share instead of each one doing independently. And we had that approved through the Water Quality Control Board. So there's a lot going on the ocean outfall. And I'm just bringing these up for sort of this future, these discussions of how we're managing the outfall, how we're gaining revenue to help us to make sure that we maintain the asset, and also how we're coordinating biological monitoring and all those other components, which are really critically important, that we take a look at the ocean conditions and make sure that that discharges aren't negatively impacting the region, because this is one of the big commitments that came out of the public comment period and in the environmental impact report when you start to look at those, and really how the physical asset, which we're in charge of the physical asset, how we maintain the physical asset, which is the ocean outfall pipe, and then how the dischargers do the biological monitoring and the water quality standard monitoring, and then how those two coordinate together. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up.
Thanks, sir. So this is informational, right? It's part of our budget process.
I want to map a halibut around the outfall. The size and species distribution.
Yeah,
How
we're
many
testing purposes.
Californias, how many Pacifics?
So I have one question. Grub and maintain, what's that mean?
The grub and maintain is a way to say that we get in with a brush hog type machine, and after we do a survey, obviously we don't remove things that we shouldn't be removing, but we do a survey, we go out there and we walk the site and we grub the site. And then from a maintenance standpoint, the maintain piece, that's what our staff does. So we hire out the grubbing because we don't operate that sort of equipment or own the equipment to operate. It's not equipment you want to rent because he takes blades, he takes knives, he takes hubs. When you're doing this sort of work, you lose a little bit of equipment. It's easier to hire it out. We have an excellent contractor who's typically come in and done it. And he's a small independent contractor, a war veteran, and just a fabulous all around vendor. And he's comes in with a great price. At least to date, that's always been the case. And so that's really what we mean by grub the site. Then the maintain is a lot of weed whacker work. We used to have CAL FIRE. We had their crews where crews come out. They did an exceptional job for us. That is a program that has not been revamped in its entirety yet. In fact, at all that I'm aware of in our region. And that's just the general maintenance done to keep the roadsides clean that we do around the lagoons and the roads and the perimeter around our tenants' buildings.
It's just really important to note too that because we've already done the biological monitoring and the ESHAs, we flag any ESHAs and any of the wetlands that are on there to make sure that we're not impacting those when we're doing the scrubbing and weed whacking and repair areas. And so we flag those areas so we don't impact any of those areas.
That will certainly be a term around my house from now on. Grubbing and maintaining. Oh, okay, sorry, I guess I must have missed that.
I just want to thank Executive Director Ucker for kind of closing the loop on some of these O&M budgets, just in terms of the strategic importance of them. And I want to thank Director Mickelson for for not giving it to us all at once. Last time we had Fields Landing and Shelter Cove, and tonight it's RMT 1 and 2 in the outfall. And so I appreciate that it allows a more robust conversation. I just have one question. Like on Fields Landing, we decided to to add more budgets to take care of some BMP and stormwater elements that maybe could come back and bite us and have a liability. So I'm getting to my question, the smokestack in a boiler room, the airline lights. Are we worried about that in terms of liability? Could that come back and haunt us if we don't do something about it and we defer it?
So it is a requirement. Right now, we have a stage light, if you will. So imagine a giant searchlight that lights up there. Recently, that has failed. And we don't have a ability to erect at the point necessary, or do we have a power source to those areas at this point in time? So we have to come up with that. What we're looking at is a windsock flag and seeing if that would be acceptable. So it's a very active, something we're working diligently on. We use a Wallen Construction, used to be Redwood Electrical. They have an intricate working knowledge of the site. And so we're looking at other alternatives right now that how we could meet that requirement.
And
So we haven't been notified. Nobody's putting the issues out there. I think we're taking proactive, preemptive steps to not be in a situation like that.
Everything's daylight operation in there anyway, right?
I believe that's what they call a visual flight path, right? So I'm just, it's something that's been in the budget. This isn't necessarily a new item, but I just want to call the attention that it's something we're diligent working on because right now we're lights out.
But emergency landings could happen at night and they may or may not be able to see that tower very well.
That would be my guess. I don't know. I don't have that pilot experience.
So are you concerned about that?
Yes. That's what we're working on.
Would you want us to see us take that out of deferred maintenance and put it higher?
Yes.
Is there a reason why you didn't? What was the reason for deferring?
So this is a preliminary budget. This isn't the actual budget.
Okay.
So right now, we're just laying out what the projects are. My thought is we're gonna have this solved before the budget.
Okay,
I'm putting place markers in there in case we have to come back with a bigger ask.
okay.
And so, yeah, maybe I could be clear on that for you, but that's really where we're at on some of these things.
Can we get this back on the Department of the Defense list, or they could blow it up as an exercise? That was actually, that was tendered.
Larry has more of that on speed dial,
So if anybody figures out how to get back on that list.
All right, so we've reviewed the preliminary budget. We're moving on to item E, another review of subcommittees and change. I actually didn't take
thought we
this to
just
the
did
public.
this.
Did I take it to the public? You guys want to comment on our?
If you want to know how to dig out an excavated underwater future.
I'll watch from the deck.
If you want to knock down a smokestack for us, though, we'll take that.
It's kind of the same thing. So we've reviewed the preliminary budget. I'm moving on to reviewing the subcommittees and change subcommittee and committee assignments as needed. I have a feeling someone wants to say something.
Well, presently I'm on the dredge committee, and since I'm a slip holder who desperately needs the area dredged and work for a possible bidder, I thought that it would be a good time for me to leave the dredge committee, since the dredge committee may well be talking to potential dredgers.
I think that. I'm fine with you being on the dredge committee, but I think I understand your
Concern.
your concern. So I think we should remove that concern. Anybody like to be on the dredge committee?
After likes talking about dredging.
Mr. Benson's on there already. Yep. I would be happy. In fact, I think,
It's at your discretion.
is it?
I believe so. You
Um,
just make a power move.
so.
thought I had a trade worked out here.
I would be glad to take your position that I filled last week on the county 2x2, if you wanted to relieve yourself of it.
I think that's another question, because we don't really have a county 2x2. We have a small peninsula infrastructure out for wind energy subcommittee. And so as part of this, were we talking about making this
I thought that was a standalone committee. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but we had talked about, I think, whether we wanted a county 2x2. Or if we wanted to make that. Give yet another. Another task to that committee.
Isn't the 2x2 committee with the city of Eureka and the Harbor District also include the county? Isn't that a three-way committee? Isn't it really a 3x3? Or am I misunderstanding?
2x2x2.
Well,
2 cubed.
Is it, so we're talking about the 2x2 committee where and so when we met with supervisors Arroyo and Wilson.
That's just
Regarding
wind energy.
that was wind energy, but there was the talk about having a standing 2x2 committee with the county and the primary topic for the near future would be wind energy, but a number of other things. So I don't know where that landed.
Well, there's another one that they have a workforce development committee.
who
So
we're
what
meeting
was-
with tomorrow, I think, right?
What was brought up, just one of the discussions that kind of came up in conversation was, what we have here is we have names of these, but what we don't have is we don't have like a sentence or a paragraph that would describe what each of these actually does, right? What we have is a name. And so then kind of from my perspective at the staff level, instead of just creating more and more and more and more committees, it's kind of can we group some committees together and have them be more logical? And so that's one thing that was I wanted to kind of broach to the board, if that was something that you wanted me to do, is that say over the course of the next month and a half, I could put together kind of a summary of what we think committees might look like, where we can kind of pair and group some of these things together. I think in the short term, Aaron has a concern with the dredge subcommittee, but I think there's kind of a little bit of regrouping and kind of what really are each of these subcommittees charged with doing that might help to facilitate this conversation.
Yeah, I think so. And I'd be happy to, I told Aaron I would, and I'd be happy to take over on the dredge committee. I'm not willing to give up my wind energy stuff.
Yeah, so maybe that sounds like a good idea. If you have a good sense of what would be a sensible.
He's on every committee on the thing.
Because it's
I mean,
like,
it's about time he took off one thing. I'm sorry, Steve. I apologize.
well, no, because I think, I've just been wanting to use the term committee creep, that we've been having the
Committee creep.
committee scope creep.
Well, that's new, and he's on every committee. He's the committee creep.
So, yeah, it would be good to have like a little definition of what, what the
these are fun.
purview of the committees.
Well, I've been thinking in terms of there's to a certain extent, there's kind of is activities that take place within the water. If you look at these and you say, you look at the piloted subcommittee, the commercial fishing subcommittee, and if we had like a recreational subcommittee and some of these things, they're kind of water-based committees, because then there's a lot of synergies that happen between those similar items, and I'm more in favor of having fewer committees and then having more broad authority within certain areas than just creating more and more and more committees.
Well, we've shaved the committees down quite a bit because we used to have more than a page full. So I think you've done a good job there.
Yeah.
So
So you're saying I could just get rid of the rest of them?
Just have two committees.
Me and Chris?
One lumping up.
I kind of hear what you're saying, Larry. Some of these things say dormant for forever. But you know, the Shelter Cove bridge thing, I mean, that's gonna switch back on every once in a while. And it really doesn't fit very well. The cove is unique. It's not like anything else. And our relationship there is kind of, and so I think the commercial fishing subcommittee, I mean, that just needs to switch on and off like issue by issue basis. I mean, it's like, and we have to have it because we know there will be issues. And then that way we can kind of pay attention as, I mean, I guess I'm playing devil's advocate. I'm playing the other side of like,
Well, and part of it, I'm, and again, I can sort of put these things together a little bit within the offshore wind. And part of it comes in with what we're thinking in terms of within the offshore wind sector. You know, there's some of these activities that take place in the water, you know, such as like the navigation channel and the dredging that kind of go hand in hand together. And these wet storage areas and the aids to navigation. And there's all of these other pieces that happen within the bay. You know, are there certain access points that we should be looking at from the recreational standpoint, public access locations? And so there's really a lot of water stuff that's happening that we're starting to.
you've obviously given this a lot of thought. What you
Well, I have,
share
you
with us
know,
like at a
when you
future
drive
meeting?
5.5 hours, you tend to think a little bit.
Yeah,
Wheel time, we call that wheel brain. So I think what you're proposing is good, Larry. I think it's fine with me. I think the rest of the board is on board with it as well, but I won't speak for them. I just did.
I'd like to see more lumping, you know, as opposed to splitting, and certainly the 2x2 committee with the city and the one that Mike Wilson is proposing, a 2x2 committee with the county. That to me, that seems like that could be the same people involved in that. I would also say, just looking at all these are being called committees, and you know, committees are sort of, to me, are those groups that meet on a regular basis because there's enough to talk about. Whereas, you know, some of these other ones that turn on and off, like the commercial fishing subcommittee, I would call those working groups. Maybe downgrade some of these from committees that need to meet on a regular basis to working groups that meet on an as needed basis around particular issues. And, you know, it just sets a different level of expectation as well. And we won't all feel like we're on a gazillion committees that meet once a month.
Do we have specific language in our ordinances that differentiate?
Well,
between a
that's,
committee
you
and a
know,
working
when,
group?
and I often draw in my experience in Arcata, which can be, you know, overly bureaucratic, but, you know, it gets down to is that we used to have working groups, committees and task forces. This is basically what you get down to. And the distinction between like a task force, you know, that'd be subject to the Brown Act and these things, because it's a bigger group and more of a specific charge. And a working group, you know, is you can bring in outside people from the board. There's the distinction between it's the board versus you're bringing people from the outside. You have a working group that you assemble that have certain expertise. And so I can do a simple definition of, you know, some different categories, and then when they may be appropriate without going crazy, just a simple little thing. And then give some suggestions on grouping and which ones might be working groups, which might be, you know, specific regular committees. And then we could go forward. You know, it's kind of like years ago, Pat, we were on the
I
Economic
was gonna
Development
mention
Task
the
Force.
Economic Development
you know.
Committee, and we kept that thing going from about 2008 through 2011, maybe. And then we had provided enough information, but it was a different time for the district. We were kind of grasping, we were kind of trying to reshape the business of the district because our old economic model really wasn't working anymore. And so right now, we kind of have a tiger by the tail. And we have so much economic opportunity that we fostered that the business of the district is prescribed kind of. So when you have a committee that comes together to do things creative and things like that, that's like when you're kind of changing direction. But you know, like, it sounds like the county's gonna be the hub of it, but you know, who's gonna get the community benefits related to offshore wind? That's a giant question. It's gonna take a committee that's completely fledged and ongoing probably for years. So we should participate in that, not host it. But otherwise, I don't know. I mean, I just don't, the dredging committee is like a constant. The labor relations committee that's always kind of switched on so that we keep good relations with the people who keep the building lit and keep things going around. And of course, the infrastructure and offshore wind. That overlaps with the Development Association. But it's different. And that's gonna be a committee where maybe we want people from the community also. So I mean, that's what I'd ask my fellow commissioners to think about, is like, are there any of these committees that we should augment and make more active, and because we're lacking public engagement in any particular area?
Well, the commercial fishing subcommittee already is really already a working group. It already has memberships. Yeah, that one,
And I think it's going to be pretty important going forward with the wind.
definitely. So, yeah, I would recommend, if it's okay with the president, that, Larry, take a stab at it, bring it back next weekend, and we're
Next
tear it to
weekend?
shreds. Yeah, next weekend, next meeting.
Bring it back by Saturday, Larry.
And to make Commissioner Newman feel at ease, I'll take over the dredging.
And that was reason to open this can of worms, sorry.
Yeah, and we don't need to sign that. We don't need to sign for that loan. We just need the loan we can use the other money for something else. If I'm in charge of the dredge committee, we don't need to dredge that hole. Right?
Well, you're not dredging a hole, you're dredging around, make a hole.
All right,
Making mountains out of molehills, all right.
okay. No, I'd be happy to step in for Commissioner Newman for a while on that committee. And his boat's sitting in the mud right now.
And I wasn't aware that that was actually a meeting of the Wind Energy Committee. I thought there was actually a different committee for 2x2 with a board.
Well, the 2x2 is the city of Eureka, because we have two commissioners that are associated with the city of Eureka. They have city councilmen, and we have lots of business with the city of Eureka, and that's really what the 2x2 committee was set up to accomplish, is increase communication between the board and the commission. And so I think that's where that came in, and the representatives from the districts.
This
that
actually
are
evolved
maintained
when
in the
somebody
city.
kept lighting our foot on fire like a hot foot over at the city over issues that were going on, because we are in the city.
But
So,
the-
yeah,
the
we
guy
are
referring to
yeah,
is with
so
the
that's-
county.
That's why it's absolutely essential,
Oh,
because
they stopped.
for a while, somebody took advantage of us and was playing havoc with the politics.
Well,
of the
there's
city and the district.
there's a couple of boards there's a couple of places where the board is asking us to meet. The wind subcommittee with the board. The labor.
Is that who's
with the
meeting
board.
tomorrow? Is it the labor relations?
Yeah, there's
committee?
two committees. There's two new committees
Yes.
that the county appointed.
Yeah, the county has two.
And so
committees.
then kind of by default, what Greg made the executive decision was one of the subcommittees is the county's offshore wind subcommittee. And so that's when Mike Wilson and Natalie are on that. And then the two of you were part of that committee. And then the second committee that the Board of Supervisors did, and I don't know if it has a specific name, but that is Rex and Michelle are on that. And so that's
The non-union contractor committee.
the non-union contractor. I don't know if I would call it that at all.
No, I think it's workforce development.
Yeah, I think it's
They're-
workforce
And
Could that be coupled with labor relations, or is that asking for two disparate groups to have a base off every?
no, I think there's plenty of room to meet with that, because we are involved in some of those discussions. Our labor relations subcommittee or committee has predominantly participated in negotiations with our own workforce.
Mhm.
All right, so our own contract and every year not every year, but every couple of years, we renegotiate a new contract with our labor. And
Yes.
we've done that. I think we've done well with that.
Yeah, so that's our labor subcommittee works with our internal.
Right. Not necessarily workforce, but I mean, it's certainly, that is something that as we move through this process, our employees, our labor is going to need workforce development. I mean, this place is getting to be a zoo. And their education, you know, he's working on his education, but everybody else here is gonna need additional climbing experience to climb and change light bulbs. And things like that, so.
So yeah,
Where does that fall
let me
into
take a look
our-
at it because it is.
PLA
It is a
and
little
stuff
bit
like that is-
complicated.
When you rework this, will you also put whatever dates that these groups meet that you may not know, and those may be dynamic, but I think I've missed a few meetings just by not knowing.
None of them have had, we've never had really. I would say regular meeting agendas and meeting times.
Yeah, not since the Economic Development Committee.
Yeah, there's been a couple that have met, you know, they've had to meet for a period of time and have met weekly or, you know, a couple times a week. But most of the time it's just as needed.
Yeah, that's the ad hoc part of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing's been formally set up. So take Newman off of dredging, put me on dredging.
We have the county offshore wind task force, which is the same as the offshore wind. We'll add that to the offshore wind and then we'll figure out who's gonna attend the other one.
Yeah.
But I think it's tomorrow, but I haven't checked.
I'm not.
I don't
Yet,
I don't think.
So that's like,
Yeah.
that was like at 3 o'clock.
No, we're not meeting
We're not meeting tomorrow morning, but we're meeting
at 3 o'clock.
well, I don't know if that meeting next actually
I-
happened, because Scott like sent out like 20 different.
I said I can't be tomorrow, so.
I have no idea.
I can if it's actually happening, but if it's not.
Let me
happening,
know.
I
Okay.
wouldn't mind if it doesn't happen.
All right,
Okay.
so we've beat that up enough.
I am thoroughly confused, yes.
Yeah.
No,
Thank
I've
you.
got it. I feel like I've.
I
got
know
it.
you do. I know you do. So I want to thank everybody for their time and for spending your evening with us. That was it was a fun evening. And I look forward to our next one. And with that, I'm going to adjourn this. Is that okay? Are these, whose patches are these?
Each one of us got some.
Really? Did you make these?
No, they're swag from